Okay, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining Pune Knowledge Cluster's Sust-En series. So here we will be having various kinds of discussions, talks, and seminars by expert environmentalists and biodiversity professionals. So as a first talk today, we have Mr. Jayant Kulkarni. About him and about aspects of Pune Knowledge Cluster, our colleague Ashwini Keskar now will be presenting the slides. So I hand over the session to her. Over to you, Ashwini.
Thanks, Tisha. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it's pleasure having everyone here. Let me just quickly take you through what is Pune Knowledge Cluster. So Pune Knowledge Cluster was established by the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor in 2020. We are hosted by Ayuka, and we are under the City Knowledge and Innovation Cluster Initiative. So there are six such cluster initiatives in India, and Pune is one of them. The vision of PKC is where we bring in together academia, R&D institutions, industry partners, citizens to come together on a forum and where we can work on problems in this particular region using science and technology. So we play a multifaceted role where we work with different organizations using science and technology based projects. We conceptualize certain projects, we initiate them, and many times we facilitate also if there are cross partners involved over here. We also play a role in where we make vision documents or white papers which can be used to come up with strategies for the decision makers. We also learn and also engage a lot with the citizen science, and we do run citizen science programs which has a lot of active citizen partnerships. So over the last 18 months we have raised funding, we have built partnerships with different academia and research organizations, industry bodies, government bodies, as well as the R&D labs. So these are 5 of our focus areas: sustainability and environment, sustainable mobility, health, big data, AI, and capacity building. So just to give you a quick glimpse of what all we do under these focus areas. So with health, we build in collaborations with industry, NGOs, governments, and we help in generating data, which is very important for public health decisions. So when we were established, COVID was there. So we started off with COVID. And PKC was involved in facilitating the Sero survey in Pune, collecting clinical, immunological, environmental surveillance data for COVID. And this helped in creating a database. And this also helped the local bodies to take informed decisions. Under sustainability and environment, we focus on securing water, food, and livelihoods, where we aim to make such carbon sinks, promote green energy. So we work a lot and conceptualize projects which involve vegetation cover, increasing vegetation cover in urban as well as peri-urban and rural setups. For water, we are planning to develop a water action plan along with the local authorities, which will help them in decision-making support systems. Under sustainable mobility, the idea is where we'll develop sustainable solutions towards carbon neutral transportation, minimize the hazards which are involved with the transportation, use science and technology over here in planning and all of that. Big data and AI, we have recently launched a citizen science program where the idea is that there is a web-based platform which will encourage citizens to take part using astronomy images, and that has kicked off quite well. Under our capacity building vertical, we again collaborate with different institutes across Pune, and we do a lot of citizen science talks. We promote STEM education. We do a lot of teacher training workshops in such a manner which we do with several school children, certain partner schools, gamifications, learning, set up the STEM labs, and so on. So some of the key achievements which we achieved in last 18 months is we have managed to raise a funding of around 5 CR. We have signed around 18 MOUs, partnered with 60 organizations. We have international collaborations as well, and also external funded projects. This is our leadership. So Professor Kembabi, who is an ex-director of IUCA, is a principal investigator of Pune Knowledge Cluster, along with Professor Shashidhara, who is the Dean of Research at Ashoka University. Dr. Mashelkar chairs our advisory committee, and we have senior advisors in form of Ms. Rashmi Urdhvareshe, who is ex-director of ARAI, and Ms. Anita Kane, who was a chief data officer in PMC and commissioned by the TCS. PKC is a lean team, and it is headed by Dr. Priya Nagraj, who is a COO. So please keep looking at our website. We do advertise a lot of talks and webinars over here, and also what all initiatives we undertake under our sustainability and environment, as well as our other focus areas. So today I welcome you all for our first series, which is known as Sust-En. And the idea is that under our environment or sustainability and environment vertical, where I told you that we are working towards food, water, and livelihoods. And the idea is that we make Pune resilient in these terms. So how do we achieve these goals? We are increasing vegetation cover. We are working on projects which involve increasing the vegetation cover, which will help in climate change mitigation, GHGs, and also support industries. So like Disha mentioned at the beginning, under this Sust-En series for next few months, we'll be having expert talks, sessions, several discussions, workshops under these broad headings of carbon emissions, waste, water, improving the green energy, air quality, and so on and so forth. So please keep an eye on our website, and we'll be also advertising these things through different social media forums. So it's a privilege here to welcome Mr. Kulkarni, who is our first speaker and who is inaugurating this Sust-En series. So Jayant Kulkarni is a BTech and MTech from Chemical Engineering from IIT Bombay. He then joined IFS, that's the Indian Forest Services, because of his passion and interest in nature conservation. He served as an IFS officer in Maharashtra state and was posted in Melghat Tiger Reserve. He took an early retirement from his IFS services, and then he became an executive director in WRCS, that's Wildlife Research and Conservation Society. He is very much interested in conservation of private forest in Western Ghats, sustainable forest management, ecosystem restoration, policy issues with respect to these things. And because of his keen interest in nature conservation, he also does a lot of such participatory initiatives which involves local communities. So it's a pleasure having Mr. Kulkarni over here. Looking forward to listen to him for next 40 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for introducing me, Ashwini. And it's a pleasure to be here with all of you in this first talk of the Sust-En series by Pune Knowledge Cluster. So like as Ashwini introduced me, I'm the director in Wildlife Research and Conservation Society. And we are a partner with Pune Knowledge Cluster in the Pune Treeverse project, which is headed by Mrs. Kane, Mrs. Anita Kane. So yeah, so today the subject of the talk, or the broad theme of the talk, was about increasing the tree cover in Pune city. So for my talk, I have chosen the subject of urban green spaces. So I'll begin my talk now. So I'll just share my screen. So yes, so this is about urban green spaces and its importance for citizens, for the citizens of Pune city. So one of the kind of realities of life today is urbanization, and we all live in a I mean, almost all of us live in a urban setting. Um, Urbanization has been happening gradually. Maybe a few centuries back, there was hardly any urbanization. But over the past 1 or 2 centuries, there has been a rapid urbanization. Today, about 55% of the world population is urban, and it is projected to increase by around 68% in 2050. So if you notice some of the cities in the Western developed countries, the population is primarily urban. So upwards of 70, 80, even upwards of 90%. India and Africa are one of the, South Asia especially and Africa are one of the few regions of the countries where the population is still primarily rural, but this will gradually change, and gradually the India's population also likely to become more and more urban. So this is a graph of urbanization over the 1960 in India. So we start with around 18% of the population being urban in 1960, and today almost double that, which are about 35% of India's population is urban. And by around 2050, it will be like more like 45 to 50% of the population is predicted to be urban in India. So what are the why do we live in urban settings? There are obvious advantages to living in cities. The higher income levels, more access to facilities, better healthcare, transportation, etc. So there are many benefits to urban living in urban areas, and the ability to to collaborate with one another, to especially to work in companies, etc. So there are definitely many benefits to living in urban settings, and then there are some impacts also of urbanization. Some of these impacts are exposure to crowding, to noise and pollution. So and we have limited access to nature, which is found to cause stress, claustrophobia among the urban citizens, and also the high emissions of GHG gases is leading to climate change. So these are some of the impacts of urbanization. So today, about what I'm talking about the green space, the urban green spaces. So this is about mitigating the impacts of urbanization. Right. So what is urban green spaces? So we all know urban green spaces. I mean, it really needs no definition. Parks, playgrounds, community gardens. So all such settings which are mainly covered with trees and with green vegetation. So these are basically what we call as urban green spaces. So what is the role of urban green spaces? Firstly, of course, like I said, exposure to nature. So all we being located in cities, we have limited access to nature. So if we create urban green spaces, so this is one of the few ways in which we can get access to nature. Then it helps to in conservation of urban biodiversity. So earlier biodiversity was viewed to be limited to sanctuaries and national parks and so on, more rural settings. But nowadays it is recognized that urban biodiversity is also important. So these green spaces help to in conservation of urban biodiversity. And then thirdly, mitigation of pollution. Green spaces help to reduce the by absorption of CO2. They help to reduce the impact of GHG gases of climate change, and also they help to reduce the amount of dust. By the leaves, they help to catch dust and reduce the impact of dust emission on the citizens. Recreation and relaxation. So as I said, the high exposure to crowding, to pollution, vehicles, etc., it tends to create stress among the people. So the green spaces, they help to give an option or opportunity for recreation and help in relaxation and mental peace and well-being. So urban green spaces are found to have remarkable benefits for emotional and mental well-being of the people. Even exposure to green spaces for a small amount of time helps to calm down the mind. It's found to reduce the impact of urbanization or the stress of urbanization by reducing the heartbeat, bringing calmness to the mind, etc. So there are several studies which have shown the benefits of exposure to green spaces. So these green spaces therefore have tremendous benefits for health of the people. So like I said, mental relaxation, stress relief, and they also give an opportunity for activity, for exercise, for social interaction. So many of these green spaces provide an opportunity for social interactions. In many cities of the world, people, you can hold classes for yoga, for tai chi, etc. in urban green spaces. In Pune, we all have our Hasya clubs where people come together, gather together, and engage in beneficial activities as a kind of community activity. So all these, it helps to improve health and even of community cohesiveness, where people come and do some participatory activities. So therefore, these green spaces, they have a tremendous value for the health and mental well-being of the citizens. Sometimes this fact is overlooked, but I think there should be the bureaucrats, the administrators of the city should be aware of the tremendous value of the urban green spaces. Benefits are pollution control. Then, like I said earlier, and also temperature control. So urban construction structures, they have what they create what is known as an urban heat island effect. And the temperature in such areas is found to be 3 to 4 degrees or even 5 degrees higher than areas which have green cover in them. So green spaces help to control the temperature of the localities. Biodiversity conservation, like I said, and mitigation of climate change. So these are some of the social and environmental benefits. So together, we overall what we can say is these urban green spaces, they bring value to the quality of life. So ultimately, the bottom line is the quality of life of citizens. And the World Health Organization has given very clear guidelines of what is the value of urban green spaces and how you can create urban green spaces, how much should be the urban green spaces. And what it overall it recommends that contact with nature is an essential component of healthy cities. So if we are looking for healthy cities and healthy lifestyle of the citizens, then the urban green spaces is very essential. And all cities should strive to increase the and create and increase the number of green spaces and the area of green spaces also. So this is kind of the distribution of green spaces of Pune City. Sorry about this cluttered kind of map because I've given the names of all the wards over here so that actually we have a kind of orientation, which area we are talking about. The central part of this map refers to the cantonment area, where we don't have the details of gardens. The cantonment area is also quite one of the green zones of the city. So there's here what we can see, these brown kind of spaces over here are the gardens, and the green spaces are the forests of the city, forest area of the city, which are found mostly on the hills or the takeries of the city. So what we can see here, especially today, I'm going to talk of the gardens. So why about gardens? Well, the forest definitely is a kind of green space, and it also has tremendous value for the city. But as they are located mostly on the hills, they are sometimes not accessible easily to the some of the populations of the city, especially the older population who will find it difficult to climb the hills and go to the takery areas. So therefore, the gardens of the city, they assume more importance for us as urban green spaces. So if you notice over here in this map, the gardens in the city, there are more gardens in the central part of the city, which is the old part of the city, which was created originally where the city actually began. As you go outwards, you can see to the south over here, we have the Rajiv Gandhi National Park or the Katra Zoo, which is one of the larger green spaces in the city. But in some of the other wards of the city, on the outskirts of the city, you will find that there are hardly any gardens. So if you see this On the north side, there's a Lohegaon airport. So there is a forest patch over here. But in terms of gardens, there are hardly any gardens over here. If you go to the western side towards Baner, Balewadi, the Pashan, Sutarwadi, again, there are hardly any gardens. On the lower eastern, southeastern side also, there are not many gardens. So what one finds is that especially the newer areas of the city, which have been added to the city gradually, so they don't have much gardens or green spaces, and which is unfortunate because actually, if you see that as we try to develop a modern and healthy Pune city, so these new areas which are added to the city, they provide an opportunity to create a more planned, a better planned city with more green spaces. But it appears that this opportunity has not been made use of, and there are comparatively fewer green spaces in the recently added parts of the city. So something about the summary of the green spaces in Pune city. The area of the city is approximately 25,000 hectares. Population of Pune city is about 34 lakhs. So these figures, they exclude, again, like I said, the cantonment area of the city. Total number of gardens is around 204. Total garden area is 219 hectares, which is about 0.9% of the area of the Pune city. Total forest area is 835 hectares, which forms 3.3%. And if you combine the two, that is the garden area and the forest area, then the total area is 1,054 hectares, which forms about 4.2% of Pune city. But as I said, the forest area, while being very important, it's actually not that accessible to some of the citizens of Pune city. While the garden areas are more easily accessible to the children and to older population who are actually more in need of these green spaces. So the real green spaces today to Pune city are provided by these gardens, and the area of the gardens is hardly around 0.9% of Pune city. Some of the parameters of green spaces, there are World Health Organization has given lots of recommendations for green spaces. So what it recommends is per capita green space for should be a minimum of 9 square meters per capita. And ideally it can even go to around 50 square meters. Then the size of green spaces should be a minimum of 0.5 to 1 hectare. And if you can provide larger green spaces, it's even better. Then the green spaces should be well distributed. That citizens, it should be a green space should be accessible to every citizen within 300 meters from their home. So if a green space is, let's say, far away, maybe 5 kilometers away, it's not really accessible to citizens, and citizens are unable to use them regularly. So it's important to have green spaces that are well distributed throughout the city. And the recommendation is that the area of green spaces in the city should be about 15% of the city's area and around 33% of the public space. So this public space, let me just say what is meant by public space. So the public space essentially consists of the roads and other footpaths, pavements, all these kinds of areas, and the green spaces, gardens, etc. So this is essentially what is meant by public spaces. And it is recommended 33% of public spaces should be the green spaces. So let's go to what is the situation in Pune city. The per capita gardens or parks in the Pune city are 0.65 square meters, as against the recommendation, the World Health WHO recommendation of 9 to 50 square meters. So we are very, very far below the norms or the standards for green spaces in a city. One should of course understand that some of these norms are set for Western countries when they have low population densities, and therefore it's possible to have more green spaces. In India, with our higher population density, sometimes it's difficult to have meet the norms which are established for European or Western countries. But nevertheless, we should try to move closer to these standards, and rather than saying that it's not possible, let's try to meet the standard as much as possible. So the minimum recommended area of a green space is around 0.5 hectares. So 83 out of 196 of our green spaces, or around 42%, are more than 0.5 hectares. And so that means roughly about half of our green spaces meet the WHO standards of having a minimum of 0.5 hectare size. Average size of green spaces is around 1.07 hectares. And the area of green spaces, as I said earlier also, it's around 0.9% as against the recommendation of 15% of the city's area. Then something a little bit about the summary of tree cover in Pune. So this information I've got from the Pune Treeverse project, which I just mentioned earlier. So total number of trees in the city is around 40 lakh. The total species of trees here in Pune city are around 425, of which 171 are native species and 253 are non-native. Native trees in terms of number, around 8.9 lakh or 22% are native trees and 77% are non-native. And the top 5, Glycidia, Subabul, rain tree, coconut, neem are all non-native species. About neem, I mean, it's a debatable topic. So most people, I mean, many people consider neem to be an Indian species, native or a native species. I feel it's a non-native. But anyway, so the at least the top 4 species are non-native. Some of the well-known green spaces in Pune, we all know and we all have personal favorites. So there's the Empress Garden, one of the largest and the best known botanical gardens in Pune city. Then the largest green space or garden in Pune city is the Rajiv Gandhi Zoological Park. Then the Peshwe Udyan, the Saras Bagh, Kamla Nehru Park, Pula Deshpande Udyan, Sambhaji Udyan. So these are some of the well-known and loved green spaces in Pune, where the original Pune residents have all grown up knowing these green spaces. And as children, many of them have probably played in these green spaces also. And also some of the other institutional campuses also can qualify at least for as green spaces, like the Pune University campus and the Agriculture College campus. Though of course not all citizens are likely to go there, but some citizens do use these spaces for walking around at their morning walk and so on. So these also, I would say, qualify as green spaces and add to the green spaces of Pune. So something about how having talked about the importance of green spaces, how could one develop green spaces in Pune? So I'm drawing from some of the recommendations, international recommendations of about green spaces. So firstly, green spaces should not be considered a luxury. Green spaces should be considered as an essential investment for the public health and for the well-being of citizens. So I think this comes first, that one understands the importance of green spaces for the health and well-being of citizens. So once we understand that the importance of green spaces, then we can start thinking of in terms of how to develop green spaces. So green spaces, it should be part of the planning process. Often it's kind of an afterthought. Oh, we should have a green space here. But actually, when the city planners, they start planning for a new area, they should also plan for a green space in that area. And we have to think long term. We have to anticipate how the development is going to take place, how many citizens are likely to be staying in a particular area, and plan for green spaces accordingly. We should know the objectives. So there are various types of green spaces. Some of them might be for biodiversity conservation. Some might be for as playground for children. Some might be for walkways, etc. So different kind of green spaces probably need to be designed differently. And there are experts who know how to design green spaces. So one should be aware of the objectives of green spaces when we create and design green spaces. Needs and uses, we should understand what are the needs of the citizens and how specific green spaces are going to be used. Depending upon that, you can plan for green spaces. And there should be a kind of diversity of green spaces according to objectives. So like I said, maybe some are more tranquil kind of places where you can have people for relaxation and for mental and emotional well-being of people, where people can conduct yoga classes, etc. While some are more for activities by the citizens for walking, jogging, cycling, etc. So one should have various kinds of green spaces according to the objectives and the needs. And like I said earlier, make it well distributed. So the WHO recommends that put green spaces close to people. So don't make them far and not inaccessible. Make them accessible to people. That's very important. Create green spaces in rich and poor neighborhoods. So sometimes what happens is the green spaces tend to be created in the better class, upper class neighborhoods, and the poorer kind of neighborhoods tend to be deprived of green spaces. So as it is, they have more lower living spaces, and on top of that, there's a lack of green spaces, so which creates more problems for them in terms of their health and mental well-being. So, and don't compromise on size. So sometimes there's a tendency to make green spaces small, but the larger green spaces can provide more value and benefits to the citizens compared to smaller green spaces. So one should create larger green spaces to the extent possible, rather than try to compromise on the size of the green spaces. Aesthetics and landscaping is very important. So it's not just kind of create a green space, plant a lawn, make a pathway through it. So one needs to be well aware of what is the value of different kinds of vegetation in the green spaces. What is the value of the lawns? What is the value of the shrubbery? What is the value of the trees? And you have to have create an aesthetic mix of the green spaces, because we don't all have access to a forest. So we should design green spaces. Green spaces should be designed such that they fulfill all the important requirements for the citizens. And then finally, for sake of conserving the native biodiversity, try to use native tree species as much as possible. So these are some of the suggestions. And so planning for green spaces, so this, like I said, is one of the most important processes. And the city planning department needs to understand and accept the guidelines for establishment of green spaces, and set norms for the minimum green spaces in terms of area of green spaces, per capita green spaces, number of green spaces. So all these, there should be norms set by the city planning departments, and these should be adhered to, especially when one is creating new green spaces, or when one is adding more areas to the city. So this is the ideal opportunity for planning for green spaces. Even in the existing areas, identify vacant land to develop green spaces. This is very important. And reserve land for green spaces whenever, like I said, an area is being developed, or when a new area is being included in sector limits. Right. So briefly, I just want to now, having talked about the green spaces, the process itself, something about some kind of overview of green spaces in India and throughout the world also. So these are some of the green cities of the world. So in the following slides, green cities have been defined in different ways throughout for the world and for India. So exactly the figures don't match each other, so they should not try to compare the figures. So this has been defined the percent green cover in public spaces of cities. So which Norway tops over here, with 68% of the public spaces are green spaces, and the remaining are Singapore, Australia, Austria, all the way up to Sweden. So these are almost all of them, or maximum of them, number of them are in the Western countries, except for possibly some of them in China and Singapore. Then some of the iconic green spaces all over the world, I'll just run through them quickly. There's the Regent Park in London, which has got an area of 170 hectares. And so what I'm trying to highlight is green spaces which are being used by people, so they should be accessible to people, and they should be used by people. That's very important. This is Ibirapuera Park in Sao Paulo in Brazil. Then this is Hong Kong. So this again, this Ibirapuera Park, it is around quite a large park, 158 hectares. Then the Hong Kong Park, which is just about 8 hectares, but it's very beautifully landscaped, and you can see it juxtaposed with the urban settings, but nevertheless it provides a lot of value to the citizens of Hong Kong. Then the Lumphini Park in Bangkok, which has an area of 57 hectares. And this is one of the most famous green spaces in the world, this Central Park in New York, which has an area of 341 hectares. Then some of the largest city parks in the world. So this it goes for, so these are mostly sanctuaries of national parks, but which are very close to the city limits, which starts from the sizes of 2 lakh hectares. That's like a really huge area, to about Sanjay Gandhi National Park at the bottom, which has around 8,700 hectares, which is nevertheless quite a large park. But then these are more of sanctuaries, and not all of them are necessarily very easily accessible to citizens. Some of the notable city parks in India, many of you know some of these parks. There's a Jubilee Park in Jamshedpur, Shivaji Park, Kaban Park in Bangalore, etc. In Pune, we have the Deshpande, Phula Deshpande Udyan, then the Sayaji Bagh, etc. In Delhi, the Lodi Garden, Buddha Jayanti Park. So see, these are some of the notable city parks in India, which provide a lot of value as green spaces to the citizens. Then something about the green metros of India. I just wanted to show you what are the findings about this. So this over here, green percentage is defined in terms of NDVI, which is a kind of remote sensing technique for identifying the area of the green area of the city. So Delhi is the cities with the highest area. I mean, this was little surprising for me also, because I always thought it would be Bangalore. But this is only for the metros, not for the smaller cities. For the metros, Delhi has the highest, 56% of area which is defined as green, and the lowest is Mumbai, which is about just about 12%. And this is the per capita green cover. Here again, it goes from 41 square meters green space per citizen per capita in Delhi to about 4 square meters per capita in Mumbai. And some of the green cities of India, again, now this has been defined differently by this. The earlier was by Mint, and this is by Times of India. So some of the green cities are Trivandrum, Gandhinagar, Guwahati, Dehradun, Chandigarh. So what I'd like to point out here is Chandigarh is well known as one of the planned cities of India, and they have done well in the planning process itself to have about 35% of the area as the green area. So out of it, 114 square kilometers of area, 35% is a green space. So which is, I mean, it shows that they use this opportunity and created a green space for the citizens. Yes. So finally, with that, I'd like to conclude my talk. So firstly, green is smart, is what I want to say. It's not a luxury; it's a necessity. So, and we should understand that and give it the kind of priority it deserves. So making green spaces should be a priority in the smart city project objectives. So there are several priorities in the smart city project, among the transportation, mobility, various kinds of facilities and resources. So green spaces is mentioned over there, but sometimes it's not given the priority it deserves. So I'm saying it should be given a very high priority in the smart city project. And Pune is one of the cities where the smart city project is being implemented. So green spaces should have the priority it deserves in the smart city project, and it needs to be part of the planning process, like I said earlier. So whenever an area is plan for creating green spaces, and finally increase green spaces to improve the quality of our life. It's a necessity, and it's all the citizens, they deserve to have the required green spaces to have a good quality of life. So thank you. With that, I come to the end of my talk. I'd like to thank Pune Knowledge Cluster for giving me the opportunity for this talk. Thanks to Disha and Ashwini, who followed up with me for ensuring that I participated in this talk. And I'd like to thank Snehal Sadalge and Mugdha Gandhi for some of the data which I presented in today's talk. Yes, and yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'll just stop sharing now.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jayant sir. It was a really interactive and interesting talk, because I'm sure I say interactive because I'm sure a lot of participants in the audience, citizens, will have some questions for you. On behalf of PKC team and the EN Sust-En series, we thank you immensely for preparing the slides and also showing them in very educational manner. We learned a lot from this talk. So now we can take questions. There are already some questions pouring in the chat. So one of the audience members asked, okay, it's Shirish sir who is asking, did you find any definition of urban green spaces for India?
Yes, so so Shiri, I tried to look for it, but I really did not find a definition. So from various sources, urban green spaces were defined as parks, gardens, and other open public spaces which had got vegetation and tree cover. But I did not find a specific definition of green spaces for India. If you find one, please let me know. I'd be very happy to take a look at it.
Okay. Then also Anita ma'am is here and she had a specific question to you.
Right. So, let me first answer the other question. Shirish, Smart Cities mission, when they ask for data, they have asked for the data on green spaces of cities. So I can look up what the definition they gave. It's not nationally approved, but whatever they define, I can share that. Okay, my question was a little bit around the same line, but see, there was data you shared about WHO recommendation, etc., right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, my question is there any law or regulation related to urban planning that, you know, says anything about green spaces, gardens, or anything like that?
I don't think there is a law about it. I mean, I would say that probably there should be a kind of policy about it or guidelines for how much green space it should be for this thing. I'm sure there's no law about it as such.
So law is not there, but guidelines there may be.
Yeah, there may be. We'll have to actually look for it whether there are guidelines for India. Again, like I said, I could not find a specific guidelines for India. I did find some for the international guidelines. I did not find that this thing for Indian context.
Okay.
Okay. Also, Ms. Nupur Kare has her hand up, but she also has dropped a question in the chat. So when you said that the authorities should consider green space guidelines, the new construction followed these guidelines by PMC. But what about the older constructions which did not follow the guidelines or who are way far away from these?
Right. So, I mean, that's a good question. So that's why I kept on harping from the beginning. I think I repeated it too many times that green spaces should form part of the planning process. So it's something which, it's difficult to do it as an afterthought. So if you plan for it properly at the beginning, then that's the best way to create green spaces. But secondly, green spaces is really is the job of the city planning department. It's not so much about the builders themselves. So if the city planning earmarks some area for green spaces, then the remaining areas can be allocated for development, for construction, etc. So it's the job of the I think the city administration to plan for green spaces. That is what I would say. Secondly, having once the the development is already taken place, then what do you do? So then it's really difficult to create green spaces once you already done construction and everything. So then you can't have green spaces. But even sometimes there it's possible to find some vacant lots or open areas where no development has taken place. Then if the city developers, if they want, they can take over these spaces and create green space over there. It's always possible. If one has the desire, it should be possible to find some vacant lots where one can create green spaces.
Okay, got it. There are also some complimentary comments. Prachi says, kudos for starting this talk series. I found the talk very relevant. And she has a question. Is providing for green spaces a mandate of town planners, municipality or other departments?
Yes, I would say that it's definitely a mandate for the city planners, because the city administration, the city planning, it's their job to create provide all the required facilities for the citizens. I mean, just like, let's say you plan for transportation for health of the citizens. So similarly, green spaces for the quality of life of the citizens. It's an important mandate for the city planners.
Right. Lambodhar asks, what is the role of industries in the development of green spaces?
Yeah, so I mean, today, as many of you know, that the industries, it has been mandated that they should contribute to the to the social causes and well-being of citizens. So many, in fact, industries are playing a leading role, I would say, in taking up various social causes. So one of the causes that they can take up is creation of green spaces for tree plantation, for various other, I mean, various such socially important things. So definitely green spaces and tree plantation can form one of the activities which can be supported by the industries, by the corporate houses. And I would say that many of them are actually supporting such causes. So it's, I mean, to the credit that they are doing that.
Right. Just a couple of questions more. There are just pouring questions. So Rajesh asks, how much green space area is under smart city planning for Pune? If you can answer that.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. I don't think I'll be able to answer that question. Right. I don't have that information.
Right, right. Also, Nupur has a follow-up question. What about the PATE regions, which are the heat wave spots, as they have no space to create any kind of green spaces?
Yeah, true. You're right, Nupur, that once if you have gone ahead and carried out your development without allowing for green spaces, then to go back and create green spaces, it is a little difficult. So, but I mean, and of course, peat areas, they were created in the past, maybe 1 or 2 centuries back. So in such circumstances, it's really difficult to create green spaces in such area unless you take a decision that some areas have to be demolished and rebuilt and reconstructed. So that is a decision which has to be taken by the city planners. So, and that requires the real long-term planning and thinking, long-term visions. What do you want for the city? So let's say if you think of some of the cities of the world, let's say China, where I mean things are more autocratic, not as democratic in India, but nevertheless, I mean just for comparison. So in Beijing, large areas of the city have been completely rebuilt, with certain planning, and I mean, of course, the citizens probably were disturbed at that time, but nevertheless, the end result is that they are better planned. They have a better planned city now. So there are ways around it one can think of, and it needs a certain kind of political will trying to take a decision about it. That's all I can say.
Okay, yes. Okay. Nupur is also asking, as Pune was once a grassland, is tree plantation, a good idea or an activity?
Yes, of course, the tree plantation is an excellent idea. In fact, the tree verse project, which I talked about earlier, which is being implemented by Pune Knowledge Cluster. So it's all about tree plantation and estimating I think maybe one of the future series future talks in this series we can take up this subject. But yeah, so tree plantation is one of the important activities which can be taken for the improving the vegetation cover of the cities, and it's probably a very important thing to do for for mitigating the harmful effects of urbanization.
Right. Also, Rajesh is asking, isn't it more feasible and easy to create green spaces where cities have more rivers? So I don't know if.
So no, so I mean, see why I mean you're saying rivers probably because maybe you're thinking in terms of water availability.
Water irrigation.
Yes, but you can create green spaces everywhere. It's not that always you need a huge amount of water. Once you plant trees and ensure that they survive for about 2-3 years or so, after that the roots go deep and they can survive on their own. So it's not essential that you have to have you can create green spaces only around rivers. You can create green spaces everywhere, but you have to plant trees being with awareness of what are the climatic conditions in the city, and plant trees which are suitable for those climatic conditions. So that is the only requirement, I would say.
Okay, so I think so you have asked most of our questions. Nupur is thanking you for the informative and interesting session.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yes. Okay. So on this note, if there are no more questions, maybe Ashwini, you can present a vote of thanks.
So yeah, before you speak, so what I would like to say is that I'm not talking in the role of an expert or something on the subject of green spaces, but it's just something which I wanted to highlight and bring to the notice of the listeners, that green spaces, how important it is, what is the role of green spaces, and that there are norms and guidelines, and we should all citizens, city planners should start thinking in terms of these guidelines and implementing them for cities in India, and especially for our benefit for Pune City. That's all I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Correct. Thanks. Thanks for that. Yeah, Ashwini, go ahead.
So on behalf of all the people attending today's session and Pune Knowledge Cluster, I would like to thank Mr. Jayant Kulkarni for this a wonderful session on green spaces in Pune. And I really hope a lot of questions which the participants had have been answered. So like I said, this is the first talk which Mr. Kulkarni has initiated under our Sustain series. And we plan to have more such talks, including meetings and workshops in the coming months with respect to vegetation, water, air, solid waste, and other things which we initiate and we conceptualize and work under a sustainability and environment vertical at Pune Knowledge Cluster. So please keep an eye on the space of PKC's website, and we'll be advertising more such talks. And once again, I would like to thank Mr. Kulkarni for his time and effort and giving this wonderful talk over here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Jayant sir. Thank you, Ashwini. Thank you all the audience members for joining us. The session was really interactive, and we learned a lot from this conversation. So please stay tuned to hear more from Pune Knowledge Cluster about this series. We will be sending emails as well as social media posts regarding the Sust-En series. We will be having more talks and workshops, as Ashwini mentioned. So on that note, we can conclude the session.
Just a minute, Disha.
Yes.
I would like to have a photograph here.
Oh, of course.
So
yes, sure.
maybe Disha, can you just click one
I'll do that.
snapshot?
Yeah,
I would request all the participants here to please switch on their cameras.
Yeah. Okay, kindly all just switch on their camera. There are still many more participants. Okay, great. Now I see a lot of faces. Great.
Disha, can you take a screenshot of this?
Yeah, I'm taking. Okay, great. It's done.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for joining. See you for the next session under Sust-En from PKC. Thank you.